Now let's welcome Dr. Lawrence Gray, Director of Engineering at KUNGFU.AI and Adjunct Professor at Georgetown University. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Well, good morning, everyone. I have some exciting stories to tell you today. So, I'm going to tell you a couple stories centered around building strong and sustainable open source projects, right? But the way I'm going to tell you this is through lessons that I learned on the open road, right? So everyone in here has been on a road trip, right? But I don't think you've been on an epic road trip, though. So let's begin. The story, what I'm going to tell you, is about me kind of overcoming things and being kind of blessed in a sense. The first 2/3 of the talk are about open source. The last third is about something that we don't talk about a lot in tech world. It's about mental health. So let's get through the funny part. We get to the not so funny part, and but hopefully this will be enjoyable for you. So my friend Jacob and I decided that at the end of our internships in biomedical research that we were going to take a trip to Vancouver, British Columbia. All right, so we wanted to celebrate and do this, and we are on this map. We're in Southern California at California State University, Fullerton, and we were going to travel way past this map up into Vancouver, all right? So, but there's a hiccup to all of this. We only had enough money to make it halfway there and back, right? But no, hear me out. We were expecting our final paychecks from our internship, so we thought, but what the heck, we'll take this trip and we'll get the money along the way and we'll make it there. Well, you can tell from the title of this slide, it was from Fullerton to Eureka, California. We never got out of the state of California. So Jacob and I are leaving, and we're going up this blue line that's on the map here, and that's up the 5 freeway, going toward Eureka. About the same time, my parents, like a day or so before us, they were going to take this gray line, and they were going to take the Pacific Coast Highway up to San Francisco, and they were going to get there and then take a train up to Portland, Oregon, right? So we leave, that's their plan, we have our plan. So Jacob and I leave, and our first stop is San Francisco. It's about 7 hours away from where we're at. And we're staying with my fraternity brother, Will, right? And so we get there, we stay the night there, and the next morning, I check my phone to see if the money has come through, but no money, right? And so the next day we leave, and we're going toward Eureka. And I remember driving, and we're at a fork in the road where 2 roads were merging together. And Jacob looks at me and says, "Hey, that looks like your little brother." And I'm like, "No, we're 700 miles away from my house. That's not my little brother. My parents are going to, Portland, Oregon. That's not them." And I look, and it's my family. They pull up on the road at the same exact time as we do. So this is like, at this point, we have been eating beef jerky, because I forgot to tell you that we realized that we didn't account for food and water in our calculations. So we really didn't have any money. And so this became like a big deal for us. Like, my parents are there, and I'm thinking my parents are probably going to take us out to eat, right? This works out for me. And so my dad pulls over, and he gets out the car, and he's tapping his watch. And I was like, what's going on? And he tells me, he's like, "Larry, I can guarantee no matter where I'm at in the world, when it's dinner time, you show up." And so, because in college, all the time I saw my parents would go steal food from them, right? And so we go, and we're all going to Eureka. And at this point, like, we didn't have any like real plans. My parents take us out to dinner, we end up taking their leftovers because this is at this point, we really didn't have a lot, so we're not gonna turn down leftovers. And my parents were like, hey, just come back to our hotel room, we'll hang out or whatever. So we get ready, we go from dinner to go to a hotel room, and my dad goes in to check in, and we're waiting in the car. And again, my dad comes out and he has a scowl on his face, like he's upset. And I asked him, so what's going on? It's like, I don't want to stay at this hotel. I don't like it. It seems bad. And it was like, do you want to stay here? And so we were like, yes, because we were going to sleep in the car. So, and so we had a place to stay. So things are working out for us. Like, we run into my parents, we get a place to stay, we have food. And so at the end of the night, my parents go to their hotel, and my friend Jacob and I come downstairs, and Jacob wants to smoke a cigarette. So we're outside just sitting there, and we hear this loud music, right? It's like, okay, I wonder what's going on. So we go toward the music, and we see this house party, and there's people spilling out everywhere, just tons of people. So we thought, might as well just go. And because no one would even notice that we're there. And so we go, and we hang out, and the host sees us and starts speaking to us, and it's like, hey, you're more than welcome here. We hang out with him. We drink, we eat, and just have a blast at this party. And one of the great things about this party, there were like people from everywhere there. It just seemed to be just this eclectic, like range of people from all faiths, all just at this party. And I thought, this is awesome, right? And so we get ready to leave. It's like 3 a.m. in the morning, and the host said, we're having a picnic tomorrow. How about you come over? And so we're like, okay, cool. So we go back to our hotel room. I get up in the morning, I check my phone, still no money, right? So we go to this picnic, and it's amazing. We meet so many people, and I remember distinctively someone playing a guitar, someone playing a didgeridoo. It was just, you can't make this stuff up, right? So we're at this party, and we get ready to leave, and the host said, do you have a place to stay? We didn't have a hotel room anywhere, so we decided to stay there. And we do the same thing every day. We picnic throughout the day, we hang out at night. We do this for 3 or 4 days, right? And just having a blast. And Jacob was like, Larry, we might need to leave, And so we decided to head back, and like I do every single morning, I check my bank balance, and Jacob checks his, and there's no money. So we're like, okay, might as well turn back around. It's been over a week. So we head back to San Francisco to stay with Will. And we get there, and we're hanging out, and that night I decided to check my bank account again, and the money comes through. Like I have an extra $1,000 now, right? So what do I do? In my mind, I'm thinking, well, I would have spent all this money on this trip anyway. So we go out, we celebrate. I buy drinks for the entire bar. And so this is me celebrating at the bar. So it was a blast. So that's the end of that story. But how in the world does any of this relate to open source? Well, I learned some lessons there, and the first lessons, well, I guess there are ingredients to all of this. Like, there are certain things that make up how do you want to run an open source project, right? And the first thing that you need to do is start with a clear purpose and vision, right? So for Jacob and I, our vision was to go to Vancouver, right? Our purpose and vision was to go have a great time and do this, right? So this applies to open source project also, is that you need to have set goals and objectives. And this is important because it really affects your decision making, right? In the long run, just having a clear purpose and vision. So I talked about this, about embracing openness and diversity. So one of the things, so when we went to the party, there were just so many people from so many different places, and that made it memorable, right? Like we were able to actually experience that and have such a great time because of that. And so this is one of the most important things that I think about with open source is that you want to have unique perspectives. And this is what diversity brings to your project, and that you need creative solutions, and this is derived from having openness and diversity in your project, right? And so for projects, you need to embrace openness and diversity. So be open to unexpected surprises. Along our trip, there were definitely some unexpected surprises. All that kind of went into our favor, right? So for projects, you need to kind of really own these unexpected surprises because they help you grow and evolve. And unexpected surprises could be new contributors. It could be getting a new issue, but really, really try to own that and really go with these unexpected surprises. Learn from failure and keep pushing forward, right? Our trip did not start off the way that we hoped it would, but we just kept going. I don't know if it's just my personality, but I just kept going and things just kind of worked out for me. And so one of the things for open source is that you still need to learn from this, and you need to kind of stay focused on the overall goals of your project and just kind of remain resilient because things don't always go the way that you hope they will. So, and then again, I celebrated. I bought $1,000 worth of alcohol. And so this is really important. And the key to this is that you want to celebrate things such as milestones and new contributors, because what happens when you celebrate success together, there's a sense of shared ownership, right? And you want that within your project because it builds pride, right? So when you're celebrating, make sure you celebrate with everyone. So who thinks I took a risk going on this trip? Everyone. So, but you have to be willing to take risks. You may not have all the answers, you may not have all the resources, but you need to make calculated risks with projects. And that's very, very important. You all agree that I'm a very positive person. So you need to embrace the power of positivity. This surprisingly helps you build relationships and overcome obstacles and helps you achieve your goals. All right. So now we're on to our second trip. Interesting about this trip, it's a road trip, but it doesn't happen in the US. Right? I did a research internship in Melbourne, Australia, and I wanted to go off and do something special, and my lab mates were like, you should go to Tasmania, you know? And I was like, cool, that sounds good. So I was gonna fly to Tasmania. The trip was simple. Up at the top of the map here is the city of Launceston. I was gonna fly there from Melbourne and then take a bus to all the coastal towns along the way. It's not that far, it's only 7 hours or so to the capital down here at the bottom, which is Hobart. But I would stay like a day in each place and make my way. So the first place that I end up stopping here is here on the coast. There's a town called St. Helens. So I get to St. Helens and I stay in a hostel. And the first person I meet was this guy named Johnny, right? Johnny is this Nepalese guy, and we kind of hit it off, and he was like, let's go explore the area together. So I decided to just hang out with him every day, all day, and we just have this amazing bond. Like, Johnny is my brother. We've only known each other for a few hours, but he's my brother, all right? And so we go to Billabong Bay, which is the picture here, the picture that you see here. this is me and Johnny. This is 20 years ago, right? My dreads were not that long at that point, but like we go to Bellong Bay, and one of the things is that happens is at the end of the day, I decided I was going to take my bus down to the next town, and Johnny was like, "Hey, brother." He called me brother all the time, but he was like, "We don't take the bus around here." It's like, "So what do you mean?" He's like, "We're gonna, we hitchhike." And I was like, "No, not me." But surprisingly, I'm easily influenced. So we go out to the road, and I stick my thumb out, and the first person that pulls over to pick us up is an old lady in a Bentley. So we get in. She's nice. She's telling us about her life, how long she's been in Tasmania, and she's just really nice. So I'm thinking, this lady is very trusting. Like, she has a really good sense of safety, and because I wouldn't pick myself up. and so we do this, and as we go along this way, she drops us off at the next town, and someone else picks us up. And it's the same thing, families with kids, and we're going all the way down to Hobart, and we're just having a blast. And we get to Hobart, and I stay at Johnny's house, and I don't take Johnny's information. It's like, I'd never see you ever again in my life, right? I don't write postcards, I don't write letters, passing ships. Okay, so I go back to mainland Australia, and I was like, man, I really want to share this experience with someone. So I called my friend in the States, her name is Anjali, and I say, Anjali, you just won't believe what happened to me. How about you come to Tasmania? We're going to redo this trip. And so she's like me, it didn't take any much convincing. She was on board. And so we go, we do the same exact thing. We fly to Launceston, and immediately people start picking us up. It's the same exact experience that we're having along this road. And just so, I don't know if you can hear this, but if not, I will read this. Let's see. No. So I read. So Anjali and I have been friends for over 25 years, and let's see here, do we have it? Okay, so I would play the audio, but these are the words of Anjali. I remember feeling such a sense of like divine synchronicity, in the sense that we happened to stumble across so many amazing people and places and at exactly the right time and exactly the most auspicious way. And so there was something about that felt so special to me about that trip. It's not like we had any elaborate itinerary plan. We were just not following any particular type of roadmap. It just happened, right? So someone was there with me. I'm not making this up. So, but the great thing about this trip that I have it on here on several slides, is that there was this network of people, right? That had a sense of, and there was this sense of belonging. And I was brought into this community, and there was this high level of safety and trust, things that really make a community work. And so my idea was, this can be applied to open source, like these types of ideas of how you get people together and have this type of relationship. So one of the things that we did is go to Blue Tear Rainforest on this trip. So we're on our trip, and we're on the last leg of this trip, Anjali and I, and the last person to pick us up on this trip is a college student. So we were heading to Hobart, and the college student was like, do you have a place to stay? If not, you can stay with us. And as we were driving up to the house, I'm thinking, this place looks very familiar, right? We get to the house, and I'm like, this is serious deja vu. I feel like I've been here before. But I go to sleep at night, and I hear a knock on the bedroom door. and the door opens and I hear, "Hey, brother." It's Johnny, right? So Johnny and somehow I met his roommate, we stayed at his house, but me being me, I didn't take his information. Like, no, I'm going to go back. I'm never coming back to Australia. And so I leave. I end up leaving, coming back to the States. And one of the, about 8 months later, I decided, I had a lot of good friends in Australia. I want to go back, right? So this is during the time where flights to Australia were like $600, so I could actually afford it, right? And so I go back to Australia, and one day I'm sitting at a cafe just in a random spot in Melbourne, just sitting down, and guess what I hear? "Hey, brother." And I turn around, in the middle of nowhere, thousands of miles away, it's Johnny, right? So this time I take Johnny's information. Sadly, I lost it. So that's the end of that story. So the whole point of that is about keeping an active and engaged community. That's what we experience, very active and engaged community. So, and you want to create a community there's value, people feel supported and empowered, and ultimately this leads to motivation within the community to be a part of it. So, for open source projects, how do you build exposure and you build community, right? So the first thing you can do is attend conferences. And we did this quite a bit with the first project that I worked on. And you can participate in open source sprints, which they had here. And so I remember we did one in Guido from the creator of Python came to our sprint and submitted a PR. So that was awesome. You can give lightning talks. I think there's lightning talks today. Or you can get an open source software booth at conferences like PyCon. And these are ways that you can build exposure and get people inviting people to your community. So give talks at local meetups. This is simple. You get to meet locals, you get project exposure. And one of the great things about this is that you want to empower everyone that's a part of your community to do this, right? Not just core contributors or maintainers. You try to get everyone that's involved in this to go out and talk about your project. Simple, meetup.com, search for topics of interest. It is tempting to join every single meetup. Don't do that, I speak from experience. Take your time and get to know each group. So one of the great things and experience that I had was to be able to develop coursework. So early on when I joined Georgetown, the course that I was teaching was data science. And as part of when they developed the course, they incorporated open source software into the course curriculum. And one of the projects I was working on was actually used. So what ends up happening, you're providing education material for users. And what's great about this is that when you do something like this, you basically get students that are champions for your project. Like you're introducing people to your project and they're educated and they go out and they use it in the real world, right? So you can get started with this with universities, online education platforms, Coursera, Udemy, all the different platforms. Submit a conference talk, right? This is a great way to introduce people to your project. You get to share your passions, right? It takes a lot of passion to work on an open source project. And so the only thing here is select the appropriate conference and review previous proposals so that you know. One of the first things that we did before I even started contributing any code to a project, I went to this workshop for the project that I ended up working on called Yellowbrick. And I remember writing blog articles for this. And this was great because we sat around on a table and we just sat and we just wrote blog articles about the software, right? And so what ends up happening is increased exposure for your open source project. Just start a medium.com account and kind of go for it. This is one of my favorite things, is to provide mentorship. I got a lot of mentorship on my project. And so it was great because I ended up being more inclined to provide mentorship for other people. So it gives you a chance to listen to others, to give advice. And one of the most important things is to provide access to your own social network, right? So there are a lot of people that I know in the audience, and it's because people gave me access to their social networks. And this is important as being a mentor. And you just get started, make yourself available to others. So I encourage everyone. I gave a talk 2 years ago about building social capital, which I think in the data science community. So you could probably look that up, but I really believe that making yourself available to others is an important key to kind of building the data science community, right? And building this loving, trusting, safe community. So, and one of the last things is join NumFocus. So, how many people know that NumFocus put on this conference? Okay, great. So one of the things that you can do if you're an open source project out there, NumFocus, it's a way for you to increase your exposure, but you can join as an affiliated or sponsored membership. So one of the great things I said on this committee is that as an affiliated or a sponsored project, you can get access to small development grants, right? You can do things such as build your website, translate your website or your documentation into another language, and they provide funds for that. As a sponsored project, is more along the lines of handling grants and things like that you do. But it's a great organization, and I can say that because I sit on the board of NumFocus. So plus it gives you a chance to network with other projects. All right. So now the last segment of my talk. It's about, I guess what I wanted to do is look over the past 10 years and get a picture of all the things that I've been involved in, right? So I didn't know what to talk about. And so I realized that, I've been involved in data science, I've been involved in AI, I've been involved in education, I've written books about Python, and then it became obvious that Python was at the center of everything that I was doing, right? But I'm going to talk to you about an aspect of this and how Python actually saved my life, literally, and how it's connected to mental health, right? You might be wondering, how could a programming language have such an effect on someone? Right? So in order to tell the story, you really have to go back years, right, to understand who I was and where I came from. So I grew up rather poor, right? But one of the great things is my parents recognized early on that I was rather smart. I was fairly intelligent. And so this led to me getting a full ride scholarship to college. I left college. I dropped out. My parents were furious, but it was the dot-com era, and I wanted to go work for a startup. So I went to a startup. I ended up traveling the world, right? I went to every continent except for Antarctica, and I'm 19 years old. This 19-year-old African-American man just really living the life. Like, this was no one that I knew were actually doing these types of things. I left that job, went back to school. I was going to continue. I was in pre-med, so I thought I'd become a medical doctor. But I got introduced to biomedical research, right? And from there, I realized I was really, really good at science. I had a scientific way of thinking, very analytical way of thinking that suited science research. So I ended up publishing papers as an undergrad. I was doing extremely well, and I decided I was going to go do my PhD. Like, this is the next logical step in this. So I ended up going to Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, premier medical school in the world. I'm in the halls with Nobel laureates. Like, this is like my life, and I'm doing amazing research. Like, I'm getting grants. Even as a PhD student, I'm getting grants, and it's just working out for me, right? Imagine me burning the midnight oil, like in the laboratory all the time, just knowing with my heart of hearts that I'm gonna make an amazing discovery, right? And for me, the dream is standing on the stage in Stockholm, getting the Nobel Prize. Like, this was my belief. This is what I really believed. But something happened. Life had different plans for me. And I entered a deep, deep, deep depression that no amount of medication, no amount of therapy, no amount of exercise could actually help me. So what happened, right? Well, in 2010, I lost my grandmother. So I mentioned that I was poor, but I had a grandmother that lived in the countryside, right? And this place was like solace for me because she lived on a large plot of land, so I got to run around in the yard and do things, and she had fruit trees, apple, plums, pears, cherries, just anything. You just run outside and grab fruit off the tree, right? And this was like really, really great for a kid. She had this large garden, so we had fresh food all the time. And there were chickens clucking around the yard, right? And I remember it is so quiet out there in the middle of nowhere. Our nearest neighbor is like 10 miles away. And I remember that only thing you hear was this deafening sound of birds singing. Like, it was so quiet, the birds just seemed really, really loud. And going to sleep at night, I used to crack my window, and you could hear the crickets chirping at night, and that's how I went to sleep, right? So my grandmother was kindness personified, right? She would cook me anything that I wanted, right? And there were cookies, cakes, and candies littering the house. So it was like a kid's heaven, right? But it wasn't about the food, right? She was the kindest, most gentle, and most honest person ever. There never went a day went by that she didn't tell me how proud she was of me, right? And I just love this lady, right? My worldview was shaped by kindness. Like, that's one of my mantras is just be kind, right? And she taught me that, right? And she was just a loving person. And so she was my anchor to goodness, and that was gone. And I started to experience grief, right? Like I was saying, the grief didn't go away. It left a big void in me. And so I went into this darkness, and it was so severe that I remember days turning into weeks, weeks turning into months, months turning into years. This happened over 10 years of me being in severe depression that I couldn't do anything. And what was worst of all, I mentioned that my intellect is what got me there. It was gone, like completely. My cognitive abilities were completely deteriorated. I couldn't do simple things. I would join my PhD, right? And I remember standing in my living room, and you can imagine, so I'm in this, my living room was this blue room that had white bookshelves surrounding it. We had wood floors, and I'm standing and I'm pacing, and my wife is sitting on the couch with my laptop. and I'm dictating my dissertation. And the sad thing is I could formulate a single sentence and then it would evaporate. And I couldn't remember what it was that I was thinking. And that's how, it took months, but that's how I got through my PhD, right? So along the way, I was even hospitalized, right? And turns out I'm bipolar, right? So I had been on over 15 different psychiatric medications and nothing helped. So except, I guess one thing that I want to also mention is that because of the early work that I did in my PhD, I didn't have a problem getting a postdoc. And this worked out for me because I did it in computational biology and I didn't have to go into a lab. I just needed a computer, so I worked from home, right? But for me, I spent all my time in my basement, only finding solace in sleeping, right? And there was no sense of self-care, right? But the way I got through my postdoc is that during the spring and summer, it wasn't as bad for me. And so I would work like 80-hour weeks in order to do as much research that I could so that during the rest of the year, I can give out results, like as if I had been working the entire time. But that wasn't sustainable at all. And my postdoc didn't end very well. So in the midst of this seemingly endless darkness, I found an unexpected lifeline. It was Python programming. You might be wondering, how could a programming language help you in such a dire situation? But what I found out that the structured nature and the logical nature of Python gave my brain something that it desperately needed: clarity and focus, right? My ability to, through Python and its simple syntax, I was able to start taking complex problems and start breaking them down into manageable, smaller steps, right? And it was those small steps that my brain could wrap around, right? And so whenever I was coding, I could think again, right? And so I coded all the time, every chance that I got, because it was relief from everything. But whenever I stopped coding, I had to go back to this life where I couldn't think and do all these other things. So, but this was working out for me, and I felt that Python was a way for me to do better. But it's just not Python. Python is like the tool to facilitate something. So I talked about breaking down complex problems into simpler solutions, and that's called decomposition. And so decomposition is one of the key steps to computational thinking. And so I learned about the transformative power of computational thinking, and that's what really was helping me. Python was just the tool, right? So as this went on, I started to see that I was getting better in other areas of my life. Like, I started to feel like myself again. I felt the sense of accomplishment. I felt that I was, with every program that I built, it was like a boost to my self-esteem, right? And so this experience solidified for me the transformative power of computational thinking and of Python. And so I began to get better. I began to actually, the transition of just in code, before it was working with code, but now it was expanding to other areas of my life. I could think again, I could solve problems. And this went on, and I was doing much better, but this is at the tail end of like 10 years that I got to this point, right? So I found a new purpose, through all this, that I couldn't keep this powerful transformation to myself. Like this had to be told to everyone, right? And so I came up with this idea of Python for everyone, right? I felt that people beyond not just programmers, right, but people from different fields could actually harness this ability to think differently, to think through computational thinking, right? And so I wanted to spread that message to everyone, right? So today, I kind of stand before you not just as a proponent for mental health treatment or as a programmer. I stand before you as an advocate for a brighter, more empowering future. So one of the things that, why I really feel that this can help or aid the world overall is because we're leaning into an AI-driven future. One of the things, and I'm worried about this because of equity. One of the things for African Americans to lift them out of poverty, there are certain jobs that are stepping stones for them, right? Those are the exact jobs that AI is going to get rid of, right? And so for the future, what employers are looking for are people with analytical skills, higher order thinking skills. These are the type of jobs that are going to be around. So my hope is teaching people computational thinking as a way to bridge this sense of equity, right? And that's kind of like my vision for the future, empowering all people regardless, you know, so that they can have a stake in building this equitable future, right? And that's the end of my talk. So. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. I do this. KUNGFU.AI, they're hiring. Come talk to me. Georgetown need faculty. Come talk to me. And that's it.